If you close your eyes and listen to the intro of SWAT Kats, the Radical Squadron, you aren't hearing a cartoon. You're hearing an alarm. The guitar riff isn't catchy, it's urgent. The sound effects aren't the bouncy, elastic noises of Saturday morning. They are the screech of tearing metal, the roar of afterburners, and the detonation of ordnance. From the very first second, the show makes a sonic promise that separates it from almost everything else that aired in the 90s. It wasn't trying to sell you a toy line, and it wasn't trying to teach you how to share. It was trying to warn you. We remember the show for the jet. We remember the missiles, the razor-sharp animation, and the sheer kinetic energy of it. But if we strip away the 90s edge and the rock soundtrack, we find something much darker sitting at the center of the narrative. SWAT Kats was a show about a city that had fundamentally failed. It was a story about two men who looked at the institutions designed to protect them, the police, the government, the military, and realized that those institutions weren't just incompetent, they were obsolete. Most superhero shows are about maintaining the status quo. Batman catches the Joker so Gotham can go back to normal. Superman stops Lex Luthor so Metropolis remains safe. But in SWAT Kats, normal is the problem. Normal is the bureaucracy that punishes competence. Normal is a commander who cares more about his public image than the safety of the civilians. The audience reaches a discovery very early on, even if we didn't have the vocabulary for it as kids. The world isn't fixable. It's a broken machine that eats good intentions. So instead of trying to vote or arrest their way out of it, the SWAT Kats did the only thing that made sense. They built a jet out of garbage, flew under the radar, and did the job that the people in charge refused to do. This wasn't a show built for comfort, it was built for crisis. And it taught us that when the sky starts falling, the city isn't going to save you. You have to save yourself. To understand why SWAT Kats hits differently than other action cartoons, you have to look at the origin story. Usually, a hero is created by tragedy or destiny. Bruce Wayne lost his parents, Peter Parker gets bit by a spider, but Chance Furlong and Jake Clausen, T-Bone, and Razor weren't created by a villain. They were created by a performance review. They were the best pilots and the enforcers. They were doing their job, pursuing a criminal when Commander Farrell ordered them to fall back. They disobeyed to save lives. The villain got away due to Farrell's interference, and they were grounded. They weren't fired for failing. They were fired for being right when the person in charge was wrong. But notice the specific humiliation of their punishment. Farrell didn't just fire them, he buried them in trash. We see them trading their flight suits for oil-stained coveralls, forced to drive a tow truck while looking up in the sky they used to own. That visual, two elite soldiers sweeping floors in a graveyard of machines, tells you everything you need to know about how this city rewards heroism. This is the first adult truth the show drives home, and it's a bitter one. In a broken system, competence is a threat. Farrell didn't demote them because they were dangerous to the city. He demoted them because they were dangerous to his ego. He banished them to the salvage yard, literally throwing them away like the scrap metal they would eventually use to surpass him. This sets the stage for a dynamic that is rare in children's television. Usually, authority figures are benevolent mentors, like Splinter, or stern but ultimately good leaders, like Commissioner Gordon. Farrell is neither. He is the personification of the ceiling. He represents the middle management of the apocalypse. He is the guy who quotes the rulebook while the building is burning down. The SWAT Kats don't fight to win Farrell's approval. That's the crucial difference. In a lesser show, the series finale would be Farrell handing them their badges back and the boys returning to the force. But in SWAT Kats, that's not the goal. They don't want to be enforcers anymore. They realize that the uniform is a leash. To actually save the city, they have to exist outside of it. They have to become radicals, not because they love anarchy, but because the system has made heroism illegal. If Batman is a fantasy of what a billionaire can do with unlimited resources, SWAT Kats is a fantasy of what the working class can do with unlimited rage. Chance and Jake aren't rich. They work in a salvage yard. They're mechanics. They smell like oil and sweat. When they aren't saving the city, they are arguing about money, fixing tow trucks, and eating cheap pizza. This grounding is essential to the show's texture. The Turbokat, arguably the coolest jet in animation history, wasn't built in a sterile lab by Wayne Enterprises. It was built from the things the city threw away. There is a profound metaphor here about agency. The city viewed Chance, Jake, and the scrap parts as garbage, useless, to be discarded. The SWAT Kats took that garbage and reassembled it into the ultimate weapon. They reclaimed their agency through labor. This is why the show resonates so heavily with the latchkey kid generation. We were the generation watching this, often home alone, figuring things out for ourselves. The SWAT Kats didn't have a mentor. They didn't have a spiritual guide or a holographic AI teaching them history. They had a manual, a wrench, in each other. The show fetishizes competence. Watch the launch sequence. Switches flipping, turbines spinning, afterburners engaging. It's a celebration of technical skill. In a world that feels chaotic and unmanageable, there is a deep primal comfort in watching someone who knows exactly how to fix the engine. But this brings us back to the core discovery. The show was built for crisis, not comfort. Comfort is assuming that if you call 911, the police will handle it. Crisis is knowing that when you call, you'll get a busy signal, or worse, Commander Farrell. The SWAT Kats intervene only when the crisis has escalated beyond the system's ability to cope. They are the antibiotic for a city that has a permanent infection. And notice how the city treats them. They aren't beloved celebrities. They are hunted. They are vigilantes. The mayor relies on them but will sell them out the moment it's politically convenient. The citizens cheer for them but won't protect them. This reinforces the isolation. Even when you save the day, the world doesn't embrace you. You land the jet, you hide the suit, and you go back to the garage. You don't get the parade. You just get to survive until the next attack. The villains in SWAT Kats tells exactly what kind of world this is. These aren't bank robbers or misunderstood anti-heroes. They are nightmares. Dr. Viper isn't just a criminal, he's a biological horror. The Pastmaster isn't just a wizard, he is supernatural decay. They don't want to steal money, they want to terraform the city into a swamp or drag it into the dark ages. This isn't a crime wave, it's an extinction event. This escalation justifies the SWAT Kats' militarization. The show is that the threats facing modern society have evolved past the point of traditional policing. You can't read Dr. Viper his rights. You can't negotiate with the giant bacteria monster. The enforcers are fighting a 20th century war with handguns and cruisers, while the villains are waging a 21st century war of biological and technological annihilation. In shows like Captain Planet, the villain is pollution, and the solution is recycling. It's a solvable problem with a behavioral fix. In SWAT Kats, the villain is a giant crystal skeleton raising the dead. There is no behavioral fix for that. There are only high-yield explosives. The show respects its audience enough to admit that some problems cannot be talked down. Some threats cannot be reasoned with. It strips away the diplomatic fantasy of Star Trek and leaves us with the raw survivalism of a siege. We are under attack, the walls are breaching, and the only people coming to help are two mechanics in a homemade jet. We have to talk about Deputy Mayor Callie Briggs, not as a love interest, but as the control group for the system's failure. She represents something tragic, the absolute limit of working within the rules. Callie is competent, she is brave, and she tries to hold the city together, but she is ultimately powerless. She is trapped in the administration of Mayor Manx, a coward who cares more about his golf game than his constituents. Callie spends her entire life putting out fires that her boss started. She serves the perfect contrast to the SWAT Kat. She does everything right, she follows procedures, she works late, she fills the paperwork, and it gets her nowhere. The structural rot of Megakat City is too deep for one good politician to cure. Her relationship with the guys is the bridge between the broken system and the radical solution. Every time she uses her communicator to call them, she is tactically admitting defeat. She is acknowledging that the state cannot protect us. You can be as smart and dedicated as Callie Briggs, and you will still end up tied to a chair by a robot gangster, waiting for the guys with the missiles to bail you out. She proves that in this world, being good isn't enough to be safe. Think about the pacing of an average episode. There is almost no downtime. There is no moralizing at the end. He-Man gave us a PSA. G.I. Joe told us that knowing is half the battle. SWAT Kats gives us a guitar solo in the fade to black. Why? Because in the crisis, there is no time for a lecture. The show refuses to treat the audience like children who need to be coddled. It assumes you understand the stakes. It assumes you understand the bad guys need to be stopped. It validates the adrenaline response. This is the crisis not comfort mechanism at work. Comfort is being told that everything happens for a reason. Comfort is a tidy wrap-up where everyone learns a valuable lesson about friendship. Crisis is the understanding that you survived by the skin of your teeth and you're going to have to do it again tomorrow. The show's refusal to pause for sentimentality makes the few moments of connection feel earned. When T-Bone and Razor high-five, it's not a performative friendship moment. It's the relief of two soldiers who just walked out of a kill zone. Their bond isn't based on soft talk. It's based on the absolute trust that the other guy will cover your six. This taught us something about adult relationships that Care Bearers never could. Trust is demonstrated, not announced. You don't need to talk about your feelings if you show up when the engine fails. T-Bone and Razor are arguably the healthiest male friendships in 90s animation because they don't demand anything from each other except competence and loyalty. They are partners in a world that wants them dead. That's enough. So why does this show stick with us? Why do we still think about the Turbokat in the G-suits? It's not about nostalgia. It's because SWAT Kats was honest about the fragility of civilization. It showed us a city that was tall, modern, and technologically advanced. It showed us that the institutions we are told to trust, the police, the mayor, the military, are often run by people who are petty, fearful, or incompetent. But it didn't leave us in despair, and that's the trick. If the show was just about corruption, it would be cynical, but it's not. It's about response. It says, yes, the system is broken. Yes, Pharaoh's an idiot. Yes, the monsters are real. Now pick up the wrench. That discovery the audience reaches isn't that the world is hopeless. It's that hope is a DIY project. The SWAT Kats didn't wait for permission to save the city. They didn't wait for an apology from Pharaoh. They didn't wait for funding. They saw a crisis, they assessed their resources, they built a solution. This is the internal discovery that lingers. The world is unfixable, but it is survivable.